So I'm just going to say a few words about PATCA as we start before Sean and Theresa give their presentation. I'm a longtime PATCA member. I've been a former president of the organization, been on the board a couple, 3 times, and helped with these programs. So PATCA is a nonprofit networking peer group for independent consultants and small businesses that are in the consulting field as they share ideas and network and do social activities and business activities together. And we have these educational presentations that we give every month or so, and occasionally we have other special programs that we give. PATCA has been in a peer group here in the Valley for about 45 years. We've been around a long time. We've been around since the mid-70s. We have 1 or 2 members. Carlin Gotti, I see he's on the list. He's currently on the call. He's been around since almost the beginning of the organization. So we have pretty good longevity, and there's a lot of new members and a lot of members that have been around from the beginning. So it's a good way to network and find out what things that might help your practice, as well as just general networking. If you need to build a team, it's always a good resource. So we invite you to visit our website and find out more about the organization there. So with that said, I'm going to start out the presentation here. So Sean and Theresa have been offering business development and business strategy services for quite a while here in the Valley. Their company, SKMurphy, offers products and services that help teams build scalable and repeatable sales processes. The clients offer various things, this being Silicon Valley, electronic design, artificial intelligence, the typical things that you see in the press these days. They were formed in 2003, and I think that you can see their full bio on the meeting the meeting brochure that was posted for this meeting. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Sean and Theresa.
Welcome. We're going to talk today about lead generation, but to help us get oriented a little bit to the audience, we have a couple of questions for you. And so you can just type into the chat if you like, roughly how long you've been consulting. How many people that are maybe less than a year, less than 3 years, less than 5, 10. All right, we have a range of folks. So the techniques that we're going to talk about may be familiar to you if you've been consulting for a while, and this may just serve as a reminder of some things that maybe you should be doing, you've neglected. For newcomers, we're hoping to give you a reasonable orientation to how to look at the problem and how to move forward. One more question for the audience. What's one question you would like to see addressed in the next hour? Is there one question you want to make sure that we cover, or one topic that we address?
So where to begin, we'll definitely be covering that, and kind of how to look at things and how to get started. I don't know if we'll get to how to close deals. We'll try to bring in some tips for that.
How to find contact information, market research. How can introverts best generate leads? It turns out that introverts make the best salespeople for high ticket items. So the fact that you're introverted doesn't mean that you can't actually generate leads and close deals at the $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 level, because introverts are able to do something that extroverts sometimes can't, which is to listen.
And they're good at follow-up.
They're good at follow-up. Yeah. Maybe not so much improv, but follow-up. And it turns out that follow-up is at least as important as improv in terms of closing deals. So we'll cover some of that. All right, I think we've got a good range of questions. What part of lead gen do you do yourself, and what part do you automate, and how? That is that's probably a day-long workshop, Priyanka, but we'll cover as much of that as we can. Here's a very basic sales and marketing cycle. You have to get the phone to ring, you have to tell them something, and then when they say, I've got to get me some of that, then you've got to take the order, right? So in real life, it may be slightly more complicated than this. Today, our focus is entirely on getting the phone to ring. This could be a phone call, this could be a web request, this could be an inbound email, this could be IM chat if you've got that on your website. Essentially, it's how do you attract inquiries? How do you get people to say, I'd like to learn more about what you have to offer? And so that's our focus for today. We assume that you've got the basics of what you need to tell them once the conversation starts. And that's really the sales process. We can cover that at the end if we have time, but our focus is going to be on getting the phone to ring. So here's a short list of things we're going to try and cover today. There's about 100 different ways that you can get this done. And I'm just going to talk really fast and try and start from the top and work my way to the bottom. But try and take careful notes as we go. Turns out that this breaks down into four methods. And so this is probably a better place to start. And all of those 100 methods, for the most part, fall into one of four categories. What others say about you. And so that's often referred to as referrals or testimonials. That can also be partners that recommend you. But essentially, somebody tells a prospect for your services, you should talk to Anat. She's fantastic at data wrangling, and boy, have you got a lot of data to wrangle. It can be what you say, and this can be either in speaking engagements, this could be a webinar, this could be a podcast. In the last 2 years, webinars have become a lot more popular. So we're going to dig a little bit in on that, but there's what you say. There's what you write, which are blogs and newsletters as examples, articles, placed articles. And people tend to divide into one of two categories. There are people that are talkers and there are people that are writers. And you don't have to do both, but you probably have to do at least one if you're going to succeed as a consultant. And then finally, there's getting found when prospects are looking. And this can be the result of networking. This can be specialized sites like LinkedIn or the PATCA website where they list consultants. This can be use of AdWords. This can be making sure that you've got search engine optimization on your website. So there's four broad methods. We're going to go into some details on each of these. This is a visualization of a bunch of methods that you can use to generate leads. We've sorted them in two dimensions. The first dimension, the y-axis, is the cost in dollars. The x-axis, or the horizontal axis, is the time it takes to see an effect from the time you decide to start doing that. And so referrals tend to be very low cost and have an almost immediate effect. Networking, you may have to pay to get into the meeting or pay to join a group, but again, the lag time is short. Speaking, again, is fairly quick results. People may come up to you after the talk. That's gotten a little trickier in these webinar podcast times, but people are used to following up immediately. You've then got email newsletters. These are nice because they land in your prospect's inbox, which is where they're spending most of their time. AdWords can also be quick, but they have a much higher expense. So if you're just getting started and you're trying to do this more frugally, then you may find that you're going to do the yellow methods and not some of the others. Direct mail is a well-established technique. It's essentially sending letters, postcards. It's not that you should not try some of these things or that you should neglect website SEO or a blog or conferences, but the lag time for them to have an effect is longer. Question for the audience, just in the chat, which of these are you doing, or at least which of these have worked for you? You might say, I've tried this and this has worked, just in the chat, or if you want to speak up and verbalize, that's fine too. Networking referrals are best, referrals, direct email campaign, AdWords and SEO, referrals, SEO, a whole range of stuff. I think we remember for referrals because they tend to convert the highest, because you've got somebody that's offering a testimonial, face-to-face pitch at events, email newsletters, build visibility. So we've got people trying a range of things with a clear message that if we could just get more referrals, life would be so much sweeter. But there are a range of things that people are trying.
In a little bit, we're going to talk about how to generate more referrals, and especially if you're just getting started. So we'll be talking about those lower, faster to generate leads.
Oh, sorry, referrals. Here we are. So 2 ways to go. You can reach out to people that you know, people that are in your network, people that you've worked with. It's getting a little easier to have coffee again. You can invite them to join you. You can give them a LinkedIn recommendation. And these should always be personalized. Other ways to do this are, you can post an update on LinkedIn, remind people that you're still above ground and moving around, what you're working on. Newsletters are also good at kind of a keep alive message, or a kind of here's what I've been up to lately. And all of these may generate referrals from people that can speak to the quality of your work and what you can do.
And Priyanka, to answer a little bit of your question, some of these are very high touch where you have to do it. And then some of these, like the newsletter and that type of stuff, can be a little more automated. And so there is a mix of techniques for both of those, but the goal is to just generate referrals and asking for referrals.
Okay, Theresa.
So here's a LinkedIn post, and I'm just going to give everybody just a few minutes, type it to read it. Type in your chat when you're done, and I'll just be quiet and let you read. Okay. It looks like most people are done. So Sean, you want to go to the next slide?
I just had a comment on this. One person said my brain exploded. So this is very much a targeted message to a very particular audience. So it's a little bit of a dog whistle. It's got a lot of jargon, a lot of detail, but it communicates, if you're in that audience, that he knows what he's talking about.
So I often asked by people, what do I post? I don't want to post things to LinkedIn that are, what should I post? I thought this was a useful example. It's useful for his connections and very interesting, everybody he's connected to would find interesting. And every one of you could do a post like this. And you're providing real value. You're providing something useful and interesting to the people that you're connected to. Whatever the domain is, whatever your expertise is, this type of post would be very welcome by your connections. Whether it's, I went to this great webinar, I went to this conference, here's a cool tool I just found. All those are just great things. Also, it's okay to be personal. Here you see a picture of a 4,000 piece puzzle that I did, and it had the biggest share and likes of anything I've ever done. So it can be very personal, very much, you have to know your audience and who you're connected to. and generally things you like, they like. It's also really nice to just give thanks to people in a public way. And those are always well done. You know, if you've worked with a team, you can thank somebody for helping you out, recognize people. So great way to make it work for you.
Norma had a comment that was interesting, that she remarked that Ed could have tagged the companies that he mentioned to broaden the reach. So that's something else to consider.
Yep, absolutely.
There's low cost and high cost ways to do webinars. Low cost are using your mailing list, using a partner's mailing list, getting invited to speak at an event, or making a proposal to speak where you use the organization's mailing list. The high cost way is trade journals. There's advantages to both, especially if the journal is very targeted for the people that you're hunting. The thing that's happened in the last 2 years has been webinars are getting shorter for the most part. They're becoming much more interactive. This requires that you prepare, that you rehearse, and you give some thought to how to make it interactive. And then you have to follow up. And at the bottom of the slide there's an article we wrote in early 2020 when it became clear that webinars were going to become at least for a while, a very popular way to get the word out.
Okay.
So
just want to share how some webinars that passed, that PATCA members have done. It definitely will feature any members and get you do a webinar. You'll get a recording of it. All these guys have done a presentation for PATCA and have gotten leads from it. With that, we'll record it and get you a copy. And then Joanne Moody did a recent one on skin patches and adhesives. And then she was able to take that webinar and generate some video snippets that she shared with her LinkedIn group. So not only did she share that she was speaking, come see my talk, she was able after the event to post these little snippets and get a lot more exposure. She's gotten a couple job off. She had a couple conversations with folks and quite a few converted. So everybody, I would recommend you do a PATCA webinar. The other thing that most PATCA members, I've noticed most PATCA members don't take advantage of is the recent work piece of your PATCA profile. And this is a good way for you to put images, talk about some past profiles and projects that you've done. And you should be leveraging that.
all of these methods require a sustained effort. What can happen to consultants is you start out, you're not particularly busy, or maybe you start with 1 or 2 contracts and you're very busy. And then as you're executing that work, you don't take the time to put content out or to generate inquiries, and you find then that you're on an extended vacation. So the way to avoid that is to find a way to do lead generation efforts even when you're busy, and perhaps to do more of them when you're less busy, but always have a carve out of activities. And what we're suggesting here is you define some kind of heartbeat level of activities. And so one possibility to consider would be to do a quarterly newsletter, to do between 4 and 12 articles a year, where you either place that or you put that on your website. consider doing some kind of quarterly webinar. With Zoom, you can essentially, it's a way to produce your own video. There's many other alternatives to Zoom. I just use that because that's a popular one. Depending upon your industry or your profession, there may be some key conferences that you want to attend, that you want to get slotted in there. If you're going to take a booth, you're going to try and speak at that conference. One of the reasons why conferences were all the way to the right is because they often have a long lead time. And so it rewards people that plan, right? You suddenly remember the conference is next month, all the speaking assignments are slot, all the booths, or at least the booths that are not next to the back of the hall, are gone. So this is a way for you to plan lead generation efforts. The other thing is low intensity, long duration tends to work better than a barrage of messages in a week. And the other mistake I think people make when they're reaching out to their network, so doing a broadcast is fine, where you post a LinkedIn update or you post your newsletter, but you want to have the bandwidth to respond quickly if you get an inquiry. What you don't want to do is to send this massive barrage out and then get half a dozen or dozen inquiries and take a couple days to respond. You really want to treat any kind of inquiry as an urgent phone call and try and get back to it within that hour, because there's a much higher chance that the person is actually in the same frame of mind they were in when they did the form fill, or they sent you the email, or they left you the voicemail, right? So Priyanka asked about the tips for following up with prospects. I think there's two aspects of that. There's, on the first inquiry, you've really got to treat that as an urgent phone call. You've really got to get on that. That may mean that you need to carve out time in your day to do that every day that you get back if there's no inquiries. A lot of you folks are doing kind of brain work where you benefit from 2-4 hours of uninterrupted time. So I'm not saying that you should like check your email every 10 minutes or whatever, but you do really want to respond when they come in. The second thing is, go ahead.
So you may be getting to, the other thing is you should have a nurture list of people who are just, you want to nurture until they have a need. And that's, a great place for newsletters, things like that.
Right. The middle ground that comes between those two is, after you have that first conversation, set a timer for when you're going to come back to them. Now, if you've got a bunch of people in the pipe, then we've had a lot of people talk about different ways to automate that. But at a minimum, on your to-do list or on your calendar, just make a note. I'm going to follow up in 5 days or 7 days or 10 days, whatever the right kind of appropriate interval is, so that you don't let them fall through the cracks. Because like your prospects are busy people, and the project may be important to them, but they have a lot of other priorities like you. They get interrupted every day. Somebody else calls them and their boss comes into their office and says, hey, get on this. So community of peers is a community practice. People that are dedicated to getting better at what they're doing. That's typically not where you're selling. That's typically where you're sharpening the saw, where you're learning about things that may impact your practice. So that's the getting better part, getting better at your craft part of it. Then there's communities of customers, where you can network with prospects and stay current, where you're if you keep your eyes and ears open, whether it's in a forum or in a face-to-face meeting, you understand what kind of concerns are becoming salient, what trends seem to be at work. And that's essentially, Ed was sending out to a community of customers, here's some things you might want to be aware of. And he's positioning himself as a source of useful insights into trends at work in that industry. Your goal in either case is to become a member in good standing, either by helping peer consultants who may act as partners or collaborate on larger deals with you, or by helping your prospects stay informed so they view you as a source of useful information and useful help. Okay, here's the SKMurphy 30-second ad. We have a Getting More Customers bootcamp that's on demand. It's in a inverted classroom format. So those videos you watch, and then you're interactive in a small group, kind of working the issues, working on your business. And the goal is a 90-day action plan. And then we actually meet with you several times in 90 days to help make sure that you actually execute. We're going to let you head on to lunch, and we'll break here.
And if I may, take a second, I just want to express my utmost thank and appreciation for Theresa and Murphy, Sean, for having this beautiful, wonderful networking, information sharing. We need your help. SOS. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.